And I think it's striking just how articulate those athletes are. I mean, it's like that that distance actually draws in people that because they're so tactically aware, they're actually very bright, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was quite interesting actually because there was a bit of an in-joke going on where a lot of the characters we interview will kind of say, well, we've got a lot more going on up here. Actually, we're the kind of brightest of the bunch. They were kind of quite a few said that to us. But actually, it was an aim of the production team in Bristol from quite an early stage that we wanted the film to be told by the people who took part in the races as much as possible. So we wanted to get those people and get them to actually tell us what it was like. What was it like doing those long miles, those long days, doing the training, and then what was it like actually when you went into the cauldron of the Olympic stage, and what was that like? But yeah, they were an extraordinary bunch of people. I mean, Herb Elliott in Australia, I think he's in his kind of mid-70s, but the guy looks like he could run a marathon. I mean, he's extraordinary characters.
And I mean, one character noticeable by his absence is Ovet, isn't it? Did you approach him?
Yeah, well, we were in touch with Steve Ovet, but there was a kind of feeling within the production when we started to put this together that we wanted to kind of tell this story in a slightly different way. And I think in Britain that the 1500-metre story has often been framed around Coe versus Ovet and how they were great rivals. Well, in fact, speaking to Seb Coe, I think they were actually really great friends. And I know that later this year that BBC Films are making a drama about Coe and Ovet that will come out later this year, which is based on a book. So I think we wanted to frame the story in a slightly different way. And of course, Seb Coe won both those races in 1980 and in 1984. So it felt like we'd try and tell the story in hopefully a fresher way.
And just on a personal note, how long were you involved with that?
Well, I came on in about kind of May, but a lot of research had been done and started. It was actually a process, I think, that had taken a long time. And the executive producer, Mike Poole, had been working with the IOC and with BBC Two for, I think, probably pushing on for about a couple of years, actually, to get the project going. I think it was quite a complex operation to try and get everyone on board. So by the time I came on, it was really to write a script and to plan the locations and to go and shoot the film. But actually the process, I think, it probably took at least a couple of years through the executive producer and also the series producer, Alistair Lawrence. So it kind of there was a great deal of run up to it.
And you mentioned Michael Poole, who's here, who's produces all the series and lots of stuff on BBC Four. And I'm wondering whether perhaps you or him could answer the question about using the IOC archive, because as someone, as an archivist here myself, I know that can be really, really difficult. They zealously guard their archive. It is very, very hard to get access to it.
Yeah, well, I don't know if Mike wants to talk about it. I mean, but basically the IOC, I think, can be, probably like any big organisation, there can be kind of ups and downs to working with a big organisation. But I think we found that the relationship worked really well. Tim Jordan, who's here, was the film researcher, and he was kind of working very closely with the IOC in terms of getting that footage. And the footage you saw from 1984 at the LA final, that's shot on film. I think there's like 7 or 8 different cameras in that stadium there, and it's not the usual kind of footage that you see on BBC Sport and so on. So yeah, Tim did all that work tracking down the archive, and like I say, the executive producer set up all those deals with the IOC, where actually we had from my point of view, I had almost no kind of problems at all with that at all. It was a very good relationship.
And also, I think one of the things that we talked about earlier is the fact that when you watch this on television, television tends to be a lot more forgiving when you actually look at the clash between archive footage and the modern day footage that's been specially shot. But I thought that actually worked quite well there, and I thought the use of music and the way you segued meant that it did work well. But did you have worries about using so much archive?
Well, I mean, I think you have to remember that it's a history film. So ultimately, with the history film, you have to take people back into the past, and hopefully, I mean, that footage from like the 1924 Paris Olympics, I think it's really evocative. It's very beautiful, and I think if you use it in the right way with the right music, the film editor Dilesh Correa was involved very closely in choosing all that music, and has got a lot of experience working with archive film and music. So I think we got that balance. You know, I think it was very important to us that there was a significant amount of archive, and in a way, it's the kind of USP of the film as well that we've got that IOC archive. So it would have been silly not to have used it, really.
And also, it's considering the period it covers, it's one of those Olympic stories that doesn't really feature Americans and the Russians, who sort of dominated the medals table at the time. Yeah,
sure. I mean, there are 3 other films in this series. The series is called Faster, Higher, Stronger, and there are 3 other films that will be on. And they'll be on BBC Two just before the game starts. One of the films is about the 100 metres, which obviously does feature a lot of Americans. There's a film on gymnastics as well, which is like the Russians and East Europeans. And then there's a film on swimming, which is really a battle between the Australians and the Americans. I mean, all 3, you know, really fantastic films, and you know, very different. And again, all 3 were shot around the world with a real stellar cast of characters.
It's interesting that different territories seems to have dominated that race, you know, from the Finns to the Brits and now to Africans. Do you think the African dominance will last a long time now?
Well, I think most people we spoke to seem to think that, but I think also you've got to remember that in different historical eras, there are just kind of extraordinary athletes just appear in any sport at different times. So actually, I think there's no, I mean, you know, there are some great runners in Europe. I think that there is a chance that somebody could come up which could surprise people. But at the moment, you know, the smart money's on Africa, because there are so many really top runners in, not just in Kenya, but also in other parts of Africa, like in Ethiopia, for instance.
Obviously, the drugs aren't mentioned in this, and it's in fact a story in which drugs aren't involved at all, is it? Is that because of the distance or because of the time, or what?
Well, no, you're right. I mean, drugs don't feature in this at all, actually, and I think that they're, in a way, I think if they did feature, we would have looked at that. But actually, I think you're right. For this event, there was no presence of drugs. There was no question over any of the great kind of victors or any of the characters. So no, I think it's really more of a story about location, about environment, about character, and about the will to win.